Welcome back to the Imperfection Wellness Podcast. I'm Scott Possley, your host, and I'm so glad you're here with me today as we continue our journey through Possley's paradigm. Over the last few episodes, we've explored some foundational concepts. We started with awareness, then we discussed attachment and moved on to acceptance. And hopefully you've started to realize something incredibly important. While we have thoughts, feelings, emotions, we are not defined by them. And that's so key. We are separate from them. And that brings us to today's episode. Today, we'll be discussing the fourth concept of Possley's paradigm, and that concept is be the observer. And if you don't already have a copy of the paradigm, go to imperfectionwellness.com and click on Possley's paradigm and download your free copy. But let's go back to be the observer. With this concept, this is where we begin to create even more space between ourselves and those fleeting thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And it's in that space that we find something amazing, an inner calm, that peace, that contentment from within. And I want to be clear, it doesn't mean we suppress our emotions and deny what we're feeling. Instead, we learn that these experiences don't define us. A simple way to think of it is like this. Instead of saying, I'm sad, we start to say, I'm feeling sad, or I have sad feelings. It might seem like such a small shift, but this is where we begin to change that inner narrative. And it really does make a difference. So let's go into a little bit more detail and talk about what it means to be the observer. Let's begin by creating some space right now between us and our thoughts. It might sound a little abstract at first, but let's apply this concept. Something as simple as thinking of our thoughts, feelings, and emotions being like clouds passing by in the sky. They come, they go. Sometimes they're stormy, sometimes they're light and fluffy. But no matter what they look like, we know that they're just passing by. They don't stay forever. And that ties in with what we talked about last week, this idea of impermanence, this too shall pass. We can acknowledge that what we're thinking or feeling right now isn't permanent. It's not going to be forever. And when we realize that, that's that space. The space I'm talking about where we aren't bogged down, so heavy, so emotionally distraught that this will never pass, this will never change. That's the space I'm talking about. And when we do that, we create room for impermanence. We create room for the awareness of this too shall pass. But what happens so many times is we attach ourselves to these clouds. We identify with them. We think we are them, that they define us. And again, we might say something like, I'm an anxious person. I'm always angry. And in doing so, we merge ourselves with the emotion. And then it starts to feel like this is who we are. Instead of, maybe it's just what we're experiencing in the moment. And when we start associating with it and merging ourselves with it, that's when we lose our inner calm, because we've let those thoughts and those feelings define us. So instead of identifying and being defined by our thoughts, we bring our awareness to the idea that our thoughts are fleeting and we are separate from them. Yes, we have them, but they aren't who we are. And one of my favorite ways to practice being the observer is something I call the eye of the storm exercise. It's really been a lifesaver for me, especially when I'm overwhelmed by all these thoughts and emotions. And again, it's a simple visualization. You start by imagining yourself sitting in the center of a hurricane, and if you have to, close your eyes, if it's safe to do so. But picture yourself sitting in the center of this hurricane, and all around you, The winds are howling, debris is flying, it's utter chaos. And those winds and that chaos, what's it made up of? Your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. And they're swirling around out of control. But here's the key. You're in the eye of the storm where it's calm. You're sitting in that calm, centered space and you're just observing what's going on around you. You realize it's there. You realize it's a part of you, but you begin to realize it doesn't define you. And then you realize this storm is fleeting. It will pass. Very recently, I felt overwhelmed and I closed my eyes and I visualized this scene. The storm was raging, but I wasn't in the storm. I was watching it. I was able to acknowledge that I had some overwhelming feelings, but I wasn't getting swept up into it. It wasn't defining me. I didn't identify with it, but I still felt all the emotions going through me. It just took the edge off. It lessened the pain because I knew it would pass. That's the essence of being the observer. It allows us to stay grounded, knowing that the storm may be so intense right now, but it'll pass. These thoughts, these emotions, these feelings, they're impermanent. We're separate from them. And if you're someone who feels overwhelmed by what's going on in your life right now, try this visualization. It won't make the storm go away, but it helps you find your calm center. That's where your power lies. And I need to make a clarifying point about being the observer. With this concept, it's not about denying or suppressing our feelings. I'm not telling anyone to say, oh, I'm not sad, I'm not angry. Not at all. It's about shifting the narrative. Instead of saying I'm sad, we say I'm feeling sad. I have sad feelings. That's what we talked about earlier. It's so subtle, but it's a profound difference. When we say I am angry, it's like we're making anger a permanent part of our identity. But when we say I'm feeling angry, we're acknowledging that anger is something we're experiencing, but it's not who we are. The practice of observing our emotions without identifying with them can help us break free from a lot of unnecessary suffering. We start to realize that our emotions are temporary. And instead of clouds going by or being in the eye of the storm, if that's not a good analogy for you, then think of them like a parade going by. We watch the parade, but we don't jump into the parade and let it carry us away. A little personal story. A few months back, I was dealing with some pretty intense feelings of self-doubt. And we all have that voice in our heads that says, you're not good enough, you can't do this, who do you think you are? But the voice was there, it was loud, it was relentless. And instead of letting the voice define me, I was able to step back and observe it. I sat down, closed my eyes, and I'm like, okay, I see that I have these thoughts of self-doubt. They're here, but I don't have to believe in them. And I pictured these thoughts. I visualized them. And after a while, they passed. It didn't take over like it used to. It didn't cause me emotional grief in the same way it used to, because I didn't give them the power I used to. There was doubt there, but I had a comfort around it, a space around it. Think of it as bubble wrap. Some distance from those emotions were created because I didn't own those feelings and identify as one with them. This is what it means to be the observer. Creating that space where you notice your thoughts and your emotions, but you don't get caught up in them. And sometimes we get caught up in them and don't realize it for several days or maybe a week or a month later. But when we continue to practice the concepts in the paradigm, when we continue to practice our awareness and being the observer, we start realizing it sooner and sooner. And now, instead of realizing it a week or month later, I realize it in the moment. And now I'm starting to realize it before it happened, before it comes over as an emotion in my body. I'm like, oh, there's something going on. Let me step back and create that space. We talked about some key ideas in another episode, and I think they also go hand in hand with talking about being the observer. And those concepts go back to non-judgment, non-attachment, and non-resistance. In the last episode, I called them the trifecta. And briefly, when we talk of non-judgment, it means we don't judge ourselves that we're having these thoughts and these feelings. How many times have you had a negative thought and then you feel bad about it? We all have these thoughts. However, let's flip it. When we're being the observer, we practice non-judgment. We simply notice the thoughts, we feel them, and we don't label them as good or bad. This ties in with the next concept, non-attachment, where we start to let go of the idea that we need to hold on to certain thoughts or emotions. We sometimes cling to emotions like anger or sadness because we become attached to them. They feel familiar. Even though they're painful, it's what we know. And there's strange comfort in that, because sometimes the known is more comfortable than the unknown. But when we practice non-attachment, we allow ourselves to let these emotions come and go without holding on to them. And then finally, we talk about non-resistance. And this one can be a tough one, because it means we don't fight against what we're feeling. If you're feeling anxious or upset, it's so natural to want to push those feelings away. Push them down, suppress them, numb ourselves, avoid them. But with resistance, it only makes those feelings stronger. And then they'll pop up out of nowhere when we least expect it. So instead of resisting and suppressing and repressing and numbing and avoiding, we let them come up and we observe them. We allow ourselves to feel what we feel without resisting it. And again, I always say these concepts all tie in with each other, all 9 concepts. And what I just described also ties in with lean in and let go. And we'll talk about that in a couple episodes. But that's what we're talking about with non-resistance. And the analogy, going back to the eye of the storm exercise, a reminder that it's us sitting at the center of that hurricane. We're not fighting the storm. We're sitting in it. We're observing it. We're knowing that it'll pass. Another visualization I like to tell people about that can help reinforce this idea for all you moviegoers is to imagine yourself sitting in a movie theater. On the screen, you see your thoughts, your emotions, your experiences playing out like a film. But instead of being the character on the screen, you're in the audience. You're watching it unfold. You're separate from it. You now have the ability to see it from a distance without getting pulled into the drama. And when you feel overwhelmed by what's going on, that chatter, that voice, that inner voice, that egoic voice, which feeds stories, half-truths, judgments, ratings, comparisons, those thoughts flying by you, which lead to sad feelings or sad emotions, try to step out of that role. Try to step into the observer role. Picture yourself sitting in that theater, watching the movie, watching as your life unfolds. And remember, you're not the movie, you're the observer. That's the empowering part, because when we create that space, we're able to take a breath and then jump to the concept of action, next right action. Again, an upcoming episode. And when we have next right action, that's when we're empowered to make an action step today that influences our tomorrow. For so many of us, we've spent our entire lives identifying with our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. We don't just experience them, we become them. And going back to what we discussed earlier, oftentimes when we say we feel sad, we identify as I am sad. And that's the entirety of who we are in the moment. When we think a negative thought, we often let it define our self-worth or how we view the world. And this identification is so ingrained that we don't even question it because we've never been taught to. At least I was never. That's why this was so monumental for me when I came to this awareness. And when that happens, we end up moving through life being carried away by our emotions and our thoughts, reacting impulsively, rarely pausing to consider that we might be separate from this. Yes, we're experiencing it, but it's not who we are. And this pattern of behavior becomes second nature. So now we're starting to question it. And this is where the concept of awareness is so powerful. Because now that we're aware of these automatic patterns, we can begin to question them. I used to be so quick to anger and I never knew why. Then I became the observer. Then I realized, oh, I'm not angry at this situation, but I do have some repressed and suppressed anger, and I'm going to start letting it out healthily. And with that, we start asking ourselves, am I really my thoughts, or am I the observer of them? Am I my emotions, or am I experiencing them? Yes, we have them. Remember, we don't push them away, but we just don't identify with them. Awareness allows us to step back and realize we no longer have to be at the mercy of how we feel or what our thoughts are saying. We begin to recognize that our thoughts are stories, and many times they're half-truths. They're not even the full story. It's a biased version. Our minds have a limited, often biased perspective, and we don't even see the full picture. But by becoming the observer, we can step outside of this narrow view. I always say when we step back and observe, we gain the 30,000-foot view, this expanded view. We get to take in more information instead of being stuck in this microscopic, limited view, this limited perspective, only seeing our own thoughts and perspectives and feelings. But when we pull back, we can see there might be a bigger picture and a different story. And from this vantage point, this different perspective, we see that our thoughts don't always tell the true story, or they don't tell the full story. Yes, they are a valid piece of the puzzle, but a lot of times they're exaggerated or it's a distortion of reality. When we become the observer, we create space to think through that. We create space from this inner narrative, and now we're better able to respond with more clarity, with more calm. And in doing so, we're not wrapped up or trapped in our immediate emotional reactions. Yes, we still have emotional responses. Yes, I still get frustrated, but I realize in the moment, whoops, take a deep breath, bring awareness into the picture. What story are you telling yourself, or what's going on right now? Can you create some space? Can you be the observer? And that's hard to do, I will be honest, but we get better at it over time. And as a meditation teacher, I am going to put a plug in for meditation because that practice has helped me so much as I've utilized the concepts of Possley's paradigm. And I feel like it's one of the most powerful tools I can recommend because it's been such a cornerstone of my personal transformation. And it's played such an instrumental role in helping me develop the ability to be the observer, to sit in the discomfort, to not suppress, repress, avoid, numb, whatever. And with meditation, I know life is busy. I get it. Oh my gosh, life is busy. And it's busy and complex because we make it that way. No judgment there. So many people tell me they don't have the time to meditate, or I have too many thoughts. There's no way I can sit still. As soon as I close my eyes, I get tons of thoughts. And I love hearing that because it's such a misconception that meditation is only for people with clear minds or no thoughts. And the type of meditation that I teach is for people who have a lot of thoughts. Humans have anywhere from 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, according to some studies. I'm one of those people, and I'm able to meditate, and I have tons of thoughts when I meditate. And I simply come back effortlessly to the mantra. And then I have so many thoughts, and I gently come back to the mantra. That's what I teach, a meditation technique designed for people with lots of thoughts. And over time, through this meditation practice, we're able to transcend or go beyond our thoughts. And that starts connecting us with this inner self, this inner true self, where we become free in that moment of that never-ending chatter and that chaos of our ego. This meditation technique isn't about silencing your mind, but rather learning to sit with your thoughts and observe them. And that's how you build the muscle of being the observer. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. Start with 5 minutes a day. Build up to 10 minutes a day. And if you're ready, I offer free and paid meditation techniques because I want to make sure that everyone has access to individualized learning when it comes to meditation. Head over to imperfectionwellness.com. Again, that's imperfectionwellness.com. And for those of you just starting out who want to dabble in it and see if it's for you, try the free technique. It's such a great way to build your meditation muscle. And you don't need any special equipment, an app, any specific poses. All you need is a commitment to yourself for 5 to 10 minutes a day. And to support you on this journey, when you sign up, I'll even give you a free meditation tracker and some tips and tricks on how to kind of build a practice. And again, currently this is a live virtual session training, and again, all on my website. But it's an excellent way to visualize your progress and hold yourself accountable by weaving meditation into your daily routine. Setting aside that 5 to 10 minutes a day, and we all have 5 to 10 minutes a day. We do. If we sit there and think about it, we can make time for that because we're worth it. We might not always feel like we're worth it. We might always make an excuse of why we can't do it. But if you can read a book or watch TV or send a personal email or play on social media, you can find 5 to 10 minutes a day to change your wellness journey. Again, I'm very biased. But I do believe meditation helps us cultivate that ability to observe our emotions and thoughts without being pulled into them. And I'm still on my journey. I still stumble and fall, but now I know to get up, and I get up quicker, and I get up easier. And when I stumble, it doesn't hurt as bad, and I'm getting better, and I don't stumble as often. But I am still human. That's what we realize through this wellness journey. So with all of that, we are at the end of this week's episode. And as always, I'm so happy to have you listening and joining me. And next week, we are going to be talking about the 5th concept of Possley's paradigm, surrender. And with surrender, it's learning to let go of our need to control and just allow life to unfold as it will. It doesn't mean we stop trying or caring. It means that we trust in a process and surrender to what is. I'm really excited to explore this topic with you, so please be sure to tune in for the next episode. And thank you so much for joining me. Just remember, you're not your thoughts. You are the observer. And until next time, as always, wishing you the best on your wellness journey.